them all to make comment on as they want to. How important and how urgent is it that the U.S. and the world transition away from a fossil fuel economy? How important and how urgent is it?
I didn't pick this seat to be first, but I guess it's the luck of the draw. I think probably one of the easiest ways to identify how important this issue is to think about what happened last December in Paris. The COP21 meeting in Paris got together 196 nations across the world to address this issue, and they addressed it with a higher level of urgency than has ever been seen. And we ended up with an agreement not for 2 degrees, which is the level that has been talked about for the last 6 or 7 years, but an agreement that we aspire to limit the warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. This is a serious issue, and in order to hit the carbon caps that they're talking about, we're going to have to reduce carbon intensity of the worldwide economy by about 8 to 12% per year between now and 2030, 2050, depending on which target you hit. Another illustration of that is that the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in 2013, for the first time issued a carbon budget for the world. They said that if we want to keep warming below 2 degrees, we have to stay within a budget of 1,000 gigatons of carbon. And this gets really wonky. Basically, we've used up more than half of that already, and at the rate we're using it up right now, we've got about another 20 years left before we've completely burned through our budget and have no more carbon left to burn to keep the climate stable. So those are 2 illustrations of the urgency. We've got decades, not longer periods of time, in order to get this issue completely taken care of.
Let me back up a bit. In our society, it's become very popular to portray issues as highly polarized and adversarial. And in that context, Dan and I could easily be portrayed as the opponents on an issue. And there are certainly areas where Dan and I disagree, and we're certainly capable of arguing with great vigor on those areas of disagreement. But that has the risk of disguising the fact we actually agree on an awful lot of things, including the issue of both the importance and the urgency of addressing what we're currently doing to the climate. One of the reasons it is so urgent is that the physical factors that drive climate change play out over a very long period of time. So an awful lot of what is going to happen over the next decade, the next 2 decades, is already set in place by the actions we took, or more properly, the actions we failed to take over the last 2 or 3 decades. So if we don't act now, those failures will in fact play into how things play out in the decades, 3 decades, 4 decades from now. And the probability of really, really, really bad outcomes goes way up. It's very difficult for anything we do to change anything about the climate quickly. And therefore it is urgent that we do what we can do, starting as quickly as we can. It would have been really nice if we had acted on this 20 years ago. We had the opportunity, but we didn't. And we can bemoan that failure to capture that opportunity, but we need to focus now on what can we do now and how quickly can we get it done, because the effect will take a very long time to play out.
I think when we look at the frequency and intensity of natural disasters that are occurring as a result of changes in the climate, changes in the environment, the answer has to be yes. It is urgent and important that we deal with this right away and deal with it in meaningful ways that will really have an impact. So I agree with all that's been said so far.
I have what you might consider a good and bad opportunity. My wife is a scientist, and so I get to hear the good, the bad, and the very, very, very ugly about what's going on. And the fact of the matter is that this is beyond urgent. How many people have children? How many people have grandchildren? We're not doing this for us right here. We're doing this for the children and for grandchildren, because Jim is right, this is going to play out over an extended period of time. What was Jim Hansen, who is the leading climate change scientist, and if you pardon my French, called the Paris Agreements half-assed, because there was much more that needed to be done. And I'm of the opinion that the scientists are doing everything they possibly can. We as individuals and as institutions need to join in and help. And that's why we're strong proponents of why we're here today. So we'll let it go from there.